Hello friends, welcome to my channel Sushant Chess Wise. Today we are going to look at the next important theoretical endgame positions. So this is our next lesson and we will see how knight and pawn can fare against the king. Last time we saw how bishop and pawn generally win against the king very easily. Same way we will look at some cases here where the rook pawn is the only cause of concern. So let us see what is the simple technique when we have a rook pawn. So we know that if it is any other center pawn, knight can waste the move, we can snatch the opposition like we saw in case of bishop. Okay, here what is the thing that the knight would like to control the squares in front of the pawn. So either knight will try to control a7 or directly the winning square. So let's say for example if we have position like this. Okay, so then what we can do, use the knight to give a check, drive the king back, then take the king ahead, king goes back, see we have controlled the square a6 and now forced him away from a7. So king goes to b6, king a8, a5, kb8, a6, king a8 and the next objective would be to guard the 8 square. So before pushing the pawn further we need to be very careful. Some people would not even play the pawn to a6 and first try to regroup the knight. So knight has to come to the square c7. Okay, and after the move kb8 here we can do several things. One, we can play a7 check where after king a8 knight c7 mates on the spot. After a7 check black is compelled to go to c8 and then a8 becomes queen and white wins the game. Similarly, let's assume that the king is already on 8. That time we cannot play the pawn to a7. That time knight c7 check first, king moves to b8 and now we have got a forced mate. After the move a7, kc8, a8, queen check and mate in 2 follows. King d7, queen e8 check, kd6 and queen e6 mate. So from this position we can say that we had forced mate in 5. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 moves. So this was a forced mate for white. Now my point is why I am showing this position. This is a very easy position. Let us make the position slightly different and see what would happen. That is why it's very important to get the king along and have the king ahead or next to the pawn in case of rook pawn. Let's say we reach this position with pawn on a7 and knight on b5. It's usually very dangerous to get the pawn on the 7th rank, an equal knight endgame. Many players can play the move a7 assuming that it will win very easily and then some sacrifice happens and this kind of endgame appears. So let's say knight takes the other pawn and then king takes the knight and we are left with just pawn and knight. So what will happen here is white will not be able to win because of the bad placing of the pawn and knight. Now what we see, only way to win the game would be to support the pawn with the king and move the knight away so that it can control the queening square. So black will do the move kb7 and k8 wasting the moves. Let's say it's white to move, white can do kc5, kb7, kb4 trying to come near the pawn, k8, ka5, kb7. Now it's not possible to improve the position, of course king can waste the move, king a4, king a8, kb4, kb7, king a5, king a8. And we see still we cannot go near to the pawn because if we play k6 or kb6 it will be a stalemate and in this position there is no way to win for white. Even if the king manages till d6, after the move kd7 again king comes to 8 and the king cannot reach c7 because it will become stalemate and moment the knight moves the pawn would be taken and king and knight cannot meet the lone king. Okay, so this is one of the very important endgame positions, pawn on 7th, knight supporting it and king in front of the pawn. So let's have a look at one more similar position where the concept is slightly different. The king is standing in front of the pawn and we can see the pawn is the rook pawn. This position shows a specific characteristic of the knight, that the knight is unable to waste a tempo. Means on its own knight cannot reach to a particular square in same odd number of moves or even number of moves. For example, if this knight can go to d6 in one move, it can come there only in 3, 5, 7 or 9. It cannot come there in 2 moves. So what will happen? These black squares, let's say d6, see one move. He goes here, then goes here, then goes here and then goes here. See, in 5 moves. So he is unable to reach the position in only odd number of moves then. So this property of the knight, which has one drawback, shows this position how white can play correctly to exploit this thing about the knight and draw this game. So do note a very simple technique here. We know that we can create a stalemate by the move kc1 or kc2. Okay. All we have to do is we have to know the concept here. See what black wants. When the king comes to c1, he wants the knight on b4, and king will have to leave the c2 square and white has to go away d2 and king b2 and the pawn queens. Same. When the king is on c2, he wants the knight to be on c1 or b3 squares. So what we want here? The color of the knight. So after we come to c2, see he wants to come to e2. So what we have to note here? Whichever color the knight is standing on, we occupy that color. So after the move knight f7, white played kc2. And now we see that knight will never be able to gain tempo. Now let's see. Knight moves to d6. See again we go on its color, kc1. Knight moves to b5, king c2. Knight moves to d4 with a check and king c1. And now what we see? That knight again has to move away and allow the c2 square. After the move knight e2 check, kc2, there is no way that the knight can force the king away. This position he wanted white to play, but he can never get that. On its own he is not able to waste the tempo. But all other pieces are able to waste a tempo on their own. Okay. So pawn is not capable all the time. Once it has crossed the limit, it cannot come back. But all other pieces, bishop for instance, if on g6 can go to e8 in 2 moves also and 1 move also. Okay. So same thing knight is not able to do. So this was one analysis we can say about the peculiar case of rook pawn, means king and knight and pawn versus the king. I hope you will find this very useful. I hope you are enjoying these lessons. Do like, share and subscribe the channel. Thanks for your time.